There was once a little princess whose father was king over a great country full of mountains and valleys. His palace was built upon one of the mountains and was very grand and beautiful. The princess, whose name was Irene, was born there, but she was soon sent away after her birth because her mother was not very strong. She was to be brought up by country people in a large house, half castle and half farmhouse, on the side of another mountain about halfway between its base and its peak. The princess was a sweet little creature, and at the time my story begins, about 8 years old, I think. But she got older very fast. Her face was fair and pretty, with eyes like two bits of night sky, each with a star dissolved in the blue. Those eyes, he would have thought, must have known they came from there, so often were they turned up in that direction. The ceiling of her nursery was blue, with stars in it, as like the stars they could make it. But I doubt if ever she saw the real sky with the stars in it, for a reason which I had better mention at once. These mountains were full of hollow places underneath. Hello everybody, I hope you guys are having a beautiful and magical day. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about ancestor work and a couple things that you can do to connect to your ancestors, whether that be on your ancestor altar or even if you do not have an ancestor altar. These are just some ways that we can work with ancestor. But before I show you a couple things that I do personally, I would like to open up this book called The Princess and the Goblin. It is one of my all-time favorite works from George MacDonald, one of my favorite authors. So yeah, let's open this up. I'm going to read from a chapter for you guys. Alright, so this chapter is called Woven and Then Spun. "Come in, Irene," said the silvery voice of her grandmother. The princess opened the door and peeped in, but the room was quite dark and there was no sound of the spinning wheel. She grew frightened once more, thinking that, although the room was there, the old lady might be a dream after all. Every little girl knows how dreadful it is to find a room empty where she thought somebody was. But Irene had to fancy for a moment that the person she'd come to find was nowhere at all. She remembered, however, that at night she spun only in the moonlight, and concluded that must be why there was no sweet bee-like humming. The old lady might be somewhere in the darkness. Before she had time to think another thought, she heard her voice again, saying as before, "Come in, Irene." From the moment, she understood at once that she was not in the room beside her. Perhaps she was in her bedroom. She turned across the passage, feeling her way to the other door, where her hand had fell on the lock again. The old lady spoke. "Shut the door behind you, Irene. I always close the door of my workroom when I go to my chamber." Irene wondered to hear her voice so plainly through the door. Having shut the door, she opened it and went in. Oh, what a lovely haven to reach the darkness and fear through which she had come. Irene had an experience before this chapter. A frightful young girl was woken up by a strange fey-like creature. It looked like a cat, but it wasn't an ordinary cat. It was like a goblin, just to give you a little bit of why she was fearful. She kind of found a passageway through her castle wall, and she went up a beautiful stairwell that led to a tower, and that is where she talks to her ancestor. Okay, so let's go back to it. The soft light made her feel as if she were going into the heart of the milkiest pearl, while the blue walls and their silvery stars for a moment perplexed her with the fancy that they were, in reality, the sky which she had left outside a minute ago, covered with rain clouds. "I've lighted a fire for you, Irene. You're cold and wet," said her grandmother. Of course, there were interruptions. Then Irene looked again and saw that what she had taken for a huge bouquet of red roses on a low stand against the wall was in fact a fire which burned in the shapes of the loveliest and reddest roses, glowing gorgeously between the heads and the wings of two cherubs of shining silver. Isn't that beautiful? And when she came nearer, she found that the smell of the roses with which the room was filled came from the fire roses on the hearth. Her grandmother was dressed in the loveliest pale blue velvet, over which her hair no longer white, but a rich golden color streamed like a cataract, here falling in dull-gathered heaps, there rushed away in smooth, shining falls. Oh, just so a cascading like waterfall of silvery and gold hair. That just sounds so beautiful. I want her hair. And ever as she looked, the hair seemed pouring down from her head and vanishing in a gold mist when it reached the floor. It flowed from under the edge of a circle of shining silver. Oh my gosh. Set with alternated pearls and opals. On her dress was no ornament. Neither was there a ring on her hand, or a necklace, or a carcanet about her neck. But her slippers glimmered with the light of the Milky Way, for they were covered with seed pearls and opals in one mass. Her face was that of a woman of 23. The princess was so bewildered with astonishment and admiration that she could hardly thank her, and drew high with timidity, feeling dirty and uncomfortable. The lady was seated on a low chair by the side of the fire, with hands outstretched to take her, but the princess hung back with a troubled smile. "Why, what's the matter?" asked her grandmother. "You haven't been doing anything wrong." "I know by your face, though it is rather miserable. What's the matter, my dear?" She still held out her arms. "Dear grandmother," said Irene, "I'm not so sure that I haven't done something wrong. I ought to have run up to you at once when the long-legged cat came into the window, instead of running out onto the mountain and making myself such a fright." "You were taken by surprise, my child, and are not so likely to do it again. It is when people do wrong things willfully that they are the more likely to do them again. Come." What true words. And yet she held out her arms. "But grandmother, you are so beautiful and grand with your crown on, and I'm so dirty with mud and rain. I should quite spoil your beautiful blue dress." With a merry little laugh, the lady sprung from her chair, more lightly far than Irene herself could, caught the child to her bosom, and kissing the tear-stained face over and over, sat down with her in her lap. "Oh, grandmother, you'll make yourself such a mess," cried Irene, clinging to her. "You darling, do you think I care more for my dress than my little girl? Besides, look here." As she spoke, she sat down, and Irene saw to her dismay that the lovely dress was covered with the mud of her fall on the mountain road. But the lady stooped to the fire, and taking from it, by the stalk in her fingers, one of the burning roses, pressed it once and again, and a third time over the front of her dress, and when Irene looked, not a single stain was to be discovered. "There," said her grandmother, "you won't mind coming to me now." But Irene again hung back a flaming rose, which the lady held in her hand. "You're not afraid of the rose, are you?" she said, about to throw it on the hearth again. "Oh, don't, please," cried Irene. "Won't you hold it to my frock and my hands and my face? I'm afraid my feet and my knees want it too." "No," answered her grandmother, smiling a little sadly as she threw the rose from her. "It is too hot for you yet. It would set your frock in a flame. Besides, I don't want to make you clean tonight. I want your nurse and the rest of the people to see you as you are, for you will have to tell them how you ran away for fear of the long-legged cat. I should like to wash you, but they would not believe you then. Do you see that bath behind you?" The princess looked and saw a large oval tub of silver shining brilliantly in the light of the wonderful lamp. "Go and look into it," said the lady. Irene went and came back very silent, with her eyes shining. "What do you see?" asked her grandmother. "The sky, the moon, and the stars," she answered. "It looked as if there was no bottom to it." The lady smiled a pleased, satisfied smile, and was silent also for a few moments. Then she said, "Any time you want a bath, come to me. I know you have a bath every morning, but sometimes you want one at night too." "Thank you, grandmother. I will indeed," answered Irene, and was again silent for some moments, thinking. Then she said, "How was it, grandmother, that I saw your beautiful lamp? Not the light of it only, but the great round silvery lamp itself, hanging alone in the great open air, high up. It was your lamp I saw, wasn't it?" "Yes, my child, it was my lamp." "Then how was it so? I don't see a window all around." "When I please, I can make the lamp shine through the walls, shine so strong that it melts them away from fear the sight and shows itself as you saw it. But I told you, it is not everybody who can see it." "How is it that I can then? I'm sure I don't know." "It is a gift born with you, and one day I hope everybody will have it." "But how do you make it shine through the walls?" "Ah, that you would not understand if I were to try ever so much to make you." "Not yet, but," added the lady, rising, "you must sit in my chair while I get you the present I have been preparing for you. I told you my spinning was for you. It is finished now, and I am going to fetch it. I have been keeping it warm under one of my brooding pigeons." Irene sat down in the low chair, and her grandmother left her, shutting the door behind her. The child sat gazing now at the rose fire, now at the starry walls, now at the silvery light, and a great quietness grew in her heart. If all the long-legged cats in the world had come rushing at her then, she would not have been afraid of them for a moment. How this was she could not tell. She only knew there was no fear in her, and everything was so right and safe that it could not get in. She had been gazing at the lovely lamp for minutes, fixedly. Turning her eyes, she found the wall had vanished, for she was looking out in the dark, cloudy night. But though she heard the wind blowing, none of it blew upon her. In a moment more the clouds themselves parted, or rather vanished like the wall. She looked straight into the starry herds, flashing gloriously in the dark blue. It was but for a moment the clouds gathered again and shut out the stars. The wall gathered again and shut out the clouds. And there stood the lady beside her with the loveliest smile on her face, and a shining, shimmering ball in her hand about the size of a pigeon's egg. "There, Irene, there is my work for you," she said, holding out the ball to the princess. She took it in her hand and looked at it all over. It sparkled a little and shone here and there, but not too much. It was sort of a gray whiteness, something like spun glass. "Is this all your spinning, grandmother?" she asked. "All since you came to the house. There is more there than you think." "How pretty is it? What am I to do with it, please?" "That I will not explain to you," answered the lady, turning from her and going to her cabinet. She came back with a small ring in her hand. Then she took the ball from Irene's and did something with the two. Irene could not tell what. "Give me your hand," she said. Irene held her right hand up. Yes, that is the hand I want, said the lady, and put the ring on her forefinger. What a beautiful ring, said Irene. What is the stone called? It is a fire opal. Please, am I to keep it? Always. Oh, thank you, grandmother. It's prettier than anything I've ever saw, except those of all the colors in your... Is that your crown? Yes, it is my crown. The stone in your ring is of the same sort, only not so good. It has only red, but mine have all the colors, you see. Yes, grandmother, I will take such good care of it. But she added, hesitating, but what? Asked her grandmother. Well, what am I to say when Ludi asked me where I got it? You will ask her where you got it, answered the lady, smiling. I don't see how I can do that. You will, though, of course. I will if you say so, but you know I can't pretend not to know. Of course not, but don't trouble yourself about it. You will see when the time comes. So saying, the lady turned and threw the little ball into the rose fire. Oh, grandmother, exclaimed Irene, I thought you had spun it for me. So I did, my child, and you've got it. No, it's burnt in the fire. The lady put her hand in the fire, brought the ball out glimmering as before, and held it towards her. Irene stretched out her hand to take it, but the lady turned, and going to her cabinet, opened a drawer and laid the ball in it. Have I done anything to vex you, grandmother? Said Irene, pitifully. No, my darling, but you must understand that no one ever gives anything to another properly and really without keeping it. That ball is yours. Oh, I'm not to take it with me? You are going to keep it for me? You are to take it with you. I've fastened the end of it to the ring of your finger. Irene looked at the ring. I can see it there, grandmother, she said. Feel a little way from the ring towards the cabinet, said the lady. Oh, I do feel it, exclaimed the princess, but I can't see it, she added, looking close to her outstretched hand. No, the thread is too fine for you to see it. You can only feel it. Now you can fancy how much spinning that took, although it's such a little ball. But what use can I make of it if it lies in your cabinet? That is what I will explain to you. It would be of no use to you. It wouldn't be yours at all if it did not lie in my cabinet. Now listen. If ever you find yourself in any danger, such for example as you were this evening, you must take off your ring and put it under the pillow of your bed. Then you must lay your forefinger, the same that wore the ring, upon the thread, and follow the thread wherever it leads you. Oh, how delightful! It will lead me to you, grandmother, I know. Yes, but remember, it may seem to you a very roundabout way indeed, and you must not doubt the thread. Of one thing you may be sure, that while you hold it, I hold it too. It is wonderful, said Irene thoughtfully. Then suddenly becoming aware, she jumped up crying, Oh, grandmother, here have I been sitting all this time in your chair, and you standing? I beg your pardon. The lady laid her hand on her shoulder and said, Sit down again, Irene. Nothing pleases me better than to see anyone sit in my chair. I am only too glad to stand so long as anyone will sit in it. How kind of you, said the princess, and sat down again. It makes me happy, said the lady. But, said Irene, puzzled, won't the thread get in somebody's way and be broken? If one end is fast to my ring and the other into your cabinet, you'll find all that arranged itself. I'm afraid it is time for you to go. Might I stay and sleep with you tonight, grandmother? No, not tonight. If I had meant you to stay tonight, I would have given you a bath. But you know everybody in the house is miserable about you, and it would be cruel to keep them up all night. You must go downstairs. I'm so glad, grandmother, you didn't say go home, for this is my home. Mayn't I call this my home? You may, my child, and I trust you always will think of your home. Think of your home. That's so sweet. Now come, I must take you back without anyone seeing. Please, I want to ask you one more question, said Irene. Is it because you have your crown that you look so young? No, child, answered her grandmother. It is because I felt so young this evening that I put on my crown, and I thought you would like to see your old grandmother in her best. Why do you call yourself old? You're not old, grandmother. I am very old indeed. It is so silly of people. I don't mean you for such a time you couldn't know better, but it is so silly of people to fancy that old age means crookedness with witheredness and feebleness and sticks and spectacles and rheumatism and forgetfulness. It is so silly. Old age has nothing whatsoever to do with that at all. The fact old age means strength and beauty and mirth and courage and clear eyes and strong, painless limbs. I am older than you are able to think. And look at you, grandmother, cried Irene, jumping up and flinging her arms around her neck. I won't be so silly again, I promise you. At least I'm rather afraid to promise, but if I promise, I'd be sorry. If I didn't promise, I'd be sorry for it. I wish I were as old as you, grandmother. I don't think you are ever afraid of anything. Not for long, at least, my child. Perhaps by the time I am 2,000 years of age, I shall indeed never be afraid of anything. But I confess I have sometimes been afraid about my children. Sometimes about you, Irene. Oh, I'm so sorry, grandmother. Tonight, I suppose you mean? Yes, a little tonight, but a good deal when you had all but made up your mind that I was a dream and no real great-great-grandmother. You must not suppose I am blaming you for that. I dare say you could not help it. I don't know, grandmother, said the princess, beginning to cry. I can't always do myself as I should like, but I don't always try. I'm very sorry anyhow. The lady stooped, lifted her in her arms, and sat down with her in the chair, holding her close to her bosom. In a few minutes the princess had sobbed herself to sleep. How long she slept, I do not know. When she came to herself, she was sitting in her own chair at the nursery table, with her dollhouse before her. Okay. This may be a little bit different than a video I normally do. I really wanted to read that to you guys because I think it is the perfect example of working with your ancestors. And I know that that is a fiction book, but that is exactly how I see it. Sometimes there are lessons right in front of us that we need to learn, and we do not understand how to go about getting through those lessons. And sometimes it is in the hardest ways that we figure out the answers. And by not knowing, sometimes you are on the greatest journey that you could possibly be. And with their guidance and their help, it makes it all the more welcoming and beautiful and easier to navigate even. As humans, we try to seek out the answers, and we're a bit discouraged when we do not find them. And I myself find that there is so much more beauty and excitement and wonder in the fact that we do not know everything, you know? However, I do believe we were born with all the knowledge we will ever have and need in life. We are just reminded throughout our years when we age of the knowledge that we already have within us. Now, I want to share with you guys a couple of ancestor works that can be easy to do, especially if you need to call on an ancestor for guidance. Now, I did not write a spell or an example spell because that is personal to you, and I want you to do that yourself because this is your ancestor. So what I have gathered here is, of course, some twine, or you could use a string if there's a certain color, like say your ancestor's favorite color that you will be working with. I've also got a tree root here. I really love oak tree roots, but I will not dig up and take a root. This was actually a dried piece of tree root from an old tree that had fallen. Of course, I asked permission from the spirit. I have that there. A bit of earth would be great for ancestral work because our ancestors have walked these grounds since the beginning. And here I have a bit of dirt and moss to bind to the root. Also, I have a cardinal feather. Cardinals are associated with spirit guides, spirits, angels coming from the other side to deliver messages. So this will be beautiful in communicating with my loved ones, sending messages back and forth. It is a literal feather from a wing, so communication there. And then I also have a key that has been anointed and used as a talisman. However, I do prefer working with keys that have been actually used indoors, like old keys you have laying about or on a key ring from old buildings, cars, houses. Those to me I feel like are more personal and work really well. But if you don't have one of those, this works just great. I've cleansed all of this under dragon's blood. And then, of course, you need a bowl. You can use some intention oil of your choice. This came actually in one of my boxes. I also have water here, and that's what I will be using because water is emotion and water holds memory. That is one of the most amazing things about water, and memories are shared with ancestors, whether you were present or not. Maybe you were in another lifetime with your great-great-great-grandmother. I find that to me, it just works better than using an oil. But like I said, it is an oil infused with your intention. So if you'd rather do that too. That's just as lovely. Also over here, I have some mugwort. This is to aid in spirit communication and travel. So if I decide to meditate with this beautiful charm that I'm doing, I can actually hold on to it, place it in front of me, and I do have some herb protection here for that. Also, I have some hand-picked flowers, wildflowers from my children, some that have been bought in here as well and dried. That's just special to me, and I know I've shared many lifetimes with my children in various forms throughout life. And then I also have spirit guide candle here. Now this candle I refill with my own wax. When it burns down too low, I anoint. I also have it cleansed and basically consecrated, and I use this or light this candle only when I'm calling in aids from an ancestor or a spirit guide. This is a communication candle, and this is a candle I light when I just want to sit in silence sometimes, clean the house, do things, just to have the presence of a loved one. And I have a cup, which you don't have to use a fancy little cup. This was, or is, a beautiful cup that I use on Danu's altar. And it's very special. It already holds sacred energy, so I feel like this is fitting to use for this spell. Okay, so let's get into how to work with this spell. And you can tailor this to any way you want. And if you don't like to use a feather or a key or even a root, if you want to do something else, that is fine too. Maybe you can add in an item or a treasured piece of jewelry from an ancestor. I am not lucky enough to have that. I moved a lot growing up. I had a rocky upbringing. I was back and forth all the time, so I haven't really held on to a lot of things. I do have a couple of really precious things, but I didn't feel the need to use those today. The first thing I want you to do after you have cleansed everything, I want you to take this root and place it in the bowl. Okay? And then next, what I want you to do is we will not be using this right now, so I can move that to the side. What I'm going to do is pour some of this blessed water into this cup, and I am going to pray over this water and bless it with the blessing of my great-great-grandmother. I want you guys to know that you don't have to write a fancy spell. You don't have to, it doesn't even have to rhyme, but if that works better for you, do that. You can sing, you can chant, whatever works for you. You can just speak words, because that's actually what I'm going to be doing. You can share a memory before you draw in those energies, but just to let you know, this is personal to you. Just like any other spell you cast, it is yours. Bless the sacred water with the warmth and light of all the ancestors that surround us and guide us, so that you may guide me in all aspects of my life for communication, as water holds memories and reflections. I bless the sacred water that is ever flowing in my veins and in yours. I call into the sacred water the love and light that you have given me and passed down for generations. I pour this sacred water over a root that once connected between the realms. I wash this sacred root with your blessings. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is, I should have grabbed some paper towels, because this is pretty messy work, y'all. I have some sacred blood salts here, and I know not everybody works with blood. Of course, this is my own blood in here. There was actually quite a bit. And I made my own sacred salt blend. So I'm going to be sprinkling this over, because this is my ancestor, and I do feel like the blood in this sacred salt that I made will also deepen the connection to this aid in my magical works. I'm gonna get that all on that root. Looks so majestic, don't it? This looks like a really majestic little root. I hope you guys can see it well. I'm using my phone because my camera's dead again. Of course. Next, I'm going to be taking some mugwort, of course. I'm going to actually place that to where I can really coat it in there. And that's where that oil may help more as far as sticking. Or if you just sprinkle it, see, I'm going to leave this working in this bowl after I'm finished for a little while on my altar, and I'll only pull it out of the bowl if I feel that I need to for workings, whether I need to hold it or set it somewhere else on my altar out of the bowl. Okay, now let's add in the beauty. Some beautiful forget-me-nots and carnations. Those are lovely flowers to use. It's dropping everywhere. Let's do that. Just tear that a little bit, honestly. So lovely. Okay, really brings that color in. Next, I'm going to take the bits of dirt and moss, and what I'm going to do, can't forget the feather. I'm going to place that on top and cover up these beautiful flowers, because I'm trying to pack that in there really well. So if you use a beautiful root, please keep in mind that holes would be very beneficial to fill. I'm going to put this key over top. And then I'm going to just hold this for just a short while. And really remember as you're winding it, you can out loud share a memory if you want, or you can do it internally. You can just think about it if you're really visual, or just think about their face, the smiles, the comfort they brought to you in life that they can also bring to you in the spirit, from the spirit realm. Just think. And then when you found an area to tie it off, go ahead and do that. It's going to be really tight. And that is how it looks. Look how beautiful. So I will definitely clean this bow out just a little. And then I'll set that up on my altar for 9 days before I call it out. And then the other thing, it's just really short. This video is long enough. I wanted to show you guys is the blood salts. This right here would be perfect to use. Now, if you want to get a little bit more personal with this here without blood, you can take a little piece of hair, saliva, whatever works for you. Like I said, tailor it to how you want to do this working. But with the blood salts, you can pour this over a charcoal disc or blend it in with some of your incense that you're sprinkling around. You can call in your grandmother or whoever to come and sit with you and while you clean around the house. So you can add this into room sprays and mists in areas. You can bless it for more than just that working. Like obviously this is just my blood salts, but you can use your actual blood to connect with your ancestors. I feel that that is so far has been the most potent thing that I've had to protect my house on a full moon. I don't do this all the time, but sometimes I will use blood salts. And you don't need a lot of blood, so don't freak out and think that you need to do it in a very mindful way, in a safe way to collect your blood. Like if you're a lady, this may be TMI for some people, but you can use like your cycle blood. However, you only need a couple of drops because blood is powerful. And it just takes a couple drops anyways to really mix into salts. This, however, is Himalayan salt and sea salt. You could use that as an incense blend to call in your ancestors to your altar. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you have, give it a like. And thank you guys for sitting with me, and I'm so blessed to have you here. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and have a wonderful day. Many, many blessings.